For President Trump, all the world's a stage and we are merely tweeters. Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Stephen Green and Bill Whittle. This episode of Right Angles brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. And gentlemen, the story drove the left insane this past week that President Trump seemed to be taunting the Islamic Republic of Iran by sending out a picture of a missile launch site that had fallen on hard times, and the president said this on August 30th, said the United States of America was not involved in the catastrophic accident during final launch preparations for the Safir SLV launch at Semnan Launch Site One in Iran. I wish Iran the best wishes and good luck in determining what happened at Site One. And so at Site One apparently had fallen into disarray. Let's just say it that way. It's unclear how that happened, but it seemed to be indicating that the president was suggesting we had something to do with it, meaning the United States had something to do with it. Immediately, the left went ballistic, literally, saying that this picture he tweeted out of the site was somehow leaking classified material. And Stephen Green, we probably shouldn't let our enemies know exactly what beautiful pictures we can get of their missile launch sites now, should we?
Come on. The news was available on commercially available satellite imagery the day or 2 days before Trump tweeted this. And by the way, this might be the highest level troll ever. With this one tweet, Trump is getting inside the heads of the Israeli military, the Iranian military, the Iranian intelligence apparatus, and the Iranian government. This is sheer genius. The fact that it gets the American left just as riled up, well, that kind of lets you know whose side they're on, aren't they? Now, absolutely nothing classified was in this thing. You can go to Google Maps and get something almost as good. I read a couple of years ago that NASA purposely degraded the video that the Apollo astronauts sent back from the moon and the photographs that were developed as well once they returned. The reason was we didn't want the Soviets to know just how well we could take pictures and video from space. And I suppose back in 1969, there was a legitimate national security need for that. But nowadays, when you can punch in your street address into Google Maps and get a 3D image of your own house, anything that we might show Iran is like, oh yeah, they caught us doing that again. We should have known better. And that's clearly a case of this. What Trump was doing here wasn't risking national security. In fact, he actually enhanced our national security by encouraging the Iranians to chase their own tail. This is Twitter trollery at a level that has never been successfully done before. And my God, I sit here in awe of that one single tweet.
Bill, I've just been reading a book on the Cold War, and it's talking about President Ronald Reagan at this point, and when he introduced his what became derisively known as his Star Wars plan, his Strategic Defense Initiative, with the idea of shooting incoming missiles out of the sky, completely blew up the idea of mutual assured destruction when he basically said, hey, why should we both rely for world peace on mutual weakness? Why don't we set up a system where we can actually shoot these missiles down? We'll give it to the Soviets, and then we can both shoot our missiles down, and nobody will need missiles anymore. And what they said was, in this book, is behind the scenes, this scared the crap out of the Soviets.
Yes, it did.
Even though we were nowhere near having such technology, the Soviets immediately assumed that we must have it already. What do you think this kind of swagger from President Trump does to people in the highest ranks of the Islamic State there in Iran?
Well, there's just so much great stuff to talk about there. As far as SDI is concerned, my understanding is that Reagan made the decision to go ahead with that when it was pointed out to him that the Soviets spent 25% of their GDP on defense, while we spent 3 or 4% of our GDP on defense. And instead of fighting the Soviets with tanks where they're strong, why don't we fight them economically where we're strong? Let's put something on the table that they simply cannot, that they have to match, and they won't be able to afford it. And that'll be the end of it. So yeah, it was a stroke of genius. You said that the launch pad had fallen on hard times. The question now for the Iranians is, did the launch pad fall on hard times, or did hard times fall on the launch pad? That's a very important distinction that they're going to have to make. And it is there's so much, like I say, to talk about here. The thing that I think is most interesting is the reaction of the left, that somehow we're taunting Iran, and that's going to make war more likely, when, as any good leftist knows, the best way to avoid war is to have absolutely no defenses and to tell your enemy that you're terrified of them at all times, and no matter what happens, you would not retaliate in any way possible. That guarantees peace, because then they have no reason to attack you, you see.
Wow.
So there's that. But as far as kind of the troll level of it is, I mean, we can, once again, logic is our friend here. We can surmise that either we did have something to do with it or we didn't. If we did have something to do with it, then what Trump is doing is he's announcing to the world through this incredible trolling thing, yeah, we took out your launch pad. What a shame. It really is. It's kind of it's the distillation of, hey, nice launch pad you got there, Iran. Be shame if something happened to it. And so there's that, or we didn't have anything to do with it. But now what he's done is he's planted the seed that maybe we did. And that means that the Iranians have to now start thinking not only about what went wrong and how it went wrong, but whether or not it went wrong because of something else. And that means they're spending time doing things other than developing nuclear weapons, which I think is grand. The nearest example I can think of this historically was how they brought down Carlos the Jackal's terror network. Carlos the Jackal preceded 9/11 in Islamic terrorism. He was a terrorist in the 70s and 80s, as I remember. But I do remember how they broke his information, how they broke his organization, rather. Carlos the Jackal's security was so tight, and his control over who got to get into the organization was so tight, that after repeated events over the course of years, if not decades, Western intelligence agencies could not get an agent inside Carlos's organization because Carlos was so absolutely paranoid about this kind of thing. So what we did was, we went up and we found people who we knew were part of this organization, associates of Carlos the Jackal, and we would send known American spies to just simply stop on the street in front of them and start talking to these guys. And these guys wouldn't say jack, and we knew they wouldn't say jack. We couldn't get in there, but we go, hey, Jim, how's it going? Good to see you again, Jamal, or whoever you have to, Ernst, or whatever the case may be. And so, and we just sat there, and these guys said, who are you? I said, oh, no, we're just American intelligence, so we come by and say hi. And so over time, and over a short time, Carlos the Jackal sees all of his trusted lieutenants meeting on the streets with U.S. intelligence agents. They tell the agents nothing. They don't give away anything about Carlos. And so the way we got rid of Carlos the Jackal's organization was we let Carlos the Jackal kill his own people and eliminate his organization that way through the paranoia of the system. That's the kind of judo that's being done here. And I just think it's masterful. And not only masterful, I just think it's fun. I love thumbing my nose at bullies and dictators, because I learned a lesson that the left apparently didn't. My lesson was that if you're being bullied for your lunch money in school, and you offer to give the guy more money if he'll leave you alone, is actually not a very good way to stop bullies at all. Really doesn't seem to work.
Hey,
ever.
Scott, can I throw in one more thing? Trump's tweet came on the heels just a few weeks after Iran fired their Air Force chief, when the Israelis let it be known, because sometimes you reveal intelligence on purpose. The Israelis let it leak that F-35s have been patrolling downtown Tehran, and the Iranians had no clue that this was going on until the Israelis let it slip. And so now they've just fired their Air Force chief, and now they've got to wonder if the Israelis or the Americans are doing something to their missile sites, or if their engineers just slipped up, and they don't know. They don't know whether to arrest somebody. They don't know whether to kill somebody. They don't know whether to hire new engineers. They're absolutely clueless, and we're ratcheting up the pressure. There's this kind of U.S.-Israeli tit for tat, and it's got to be driving them bonkers, and I love it.
Well, first on the issue of the president releasing what was suggested by the New York Times may have been a classified photo. He's the president of the United States. If he wants to declassify that photo, he can do what John F. Kennedy did during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He can do what George W. Bush did with pictures back in 2003 to build the case for the war in Iraq. And so the president clearly has the authority to do this. In addition, far from being a threat to our national security, President Trump, whether you agree with his technique or not and his strategy or not, he was clearly doing something in the interest of national defense in this case. He was clearly putting that picture out there to send a signal. And that signal was heard loud and clear, I guarantee you, in the halls of leadership in the Islamic Republic of Iran. I also guarantee you that it was heard loud and clear by the long-suffering people of Iran who have had to live with this miserable form of Stone Age government for decades now. And it sends a signal to them that we see you, we understand your plight, and we are able to act at will at a time of our choosing, in a place of our choosing. It also sends a signal to a lot of the other enemies of the United States that we are capable of doing this. Now, let's say the United States did not have anything to do with the disaster that happens here. Still, what an embarrassment to the Islamic Republic that not only did they have some sort of unintended explosion at this base that caused a fire, but that we were right there watching it the whole time. So no matter how you play this, there's a lot that President Donald Trump has done on Twitter that I wish, somebody would have smacked the phone out of his hand so that he couldn't do it. This is not one of those cases. This is a case where I think he's using this megaphone that he has for a totally appropriate purpose in a modern age of instant communication in a way that sends a clear signal to our enemies and allies alike that the United States is serious about its commitments, and that we have the technology beyond anything that you currently know about to be able to take care of the threats to our way of life. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.